Ready, we're going to go ahead and start recording. Nicole, are you ready? You are. You're already on it. All right, perfect. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of brief intro to our guest today. So we have Chris Coyne, and Chris is part owner of Muletown Coffee, but that's just kind of a new endeavor for Chris. He's also the president of Motivate and retired Air Force. And Motivate is a leadership and coaching, business coaching business. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit more about that here in just a second. And then Danny Coleman is also an entrepreneur himself, also has done some small business consulting, not just in Murray County, but out in California. Is that right, Danny? Did I get that right, that you came to California?
Well, yeah, it's across the country. So
yeah,
whoever happened to find me.
And Chris was across the country, the other aisle. So he's originally from New Jersey and has made his way to home. I hope it feels like home to both of you because it feels like you should be here. So,
well, for the record, I am from Tennessee originally. I was in California for a little while.
So, Danny, I'm going to let you kick it off and just tell everybody just kind of a little bit of experience, your experience and why you have a passion for leadership development and entrepreneurship development.
Sure, yeah. So I realized that I loved small business when I started working for my father-in-law's painting contractor business back in California. And long story short, I ended up working for a real estate development company in Nashville, but it was my first virtual job, so I got to live in Columbia. And John Mason and I shared office space on the square. And I started basically sharing what I learned in small business management starting with Muletown Coffee, actually. They were my first client, and then kind of spread from there to work with different businesses around here and started putting some of my services online and got some people across the country. And so I like to talk about leadership development and management, soft skills and hard skills, because I think that for me, the biggest way that I can impact the world is if I can create good workplaces where we all spend at least 8 hours a day or so, most of us. So if you have a good workplace and it's a good workplace, if you have a good manager, then you go home being a happier and better person. So that's why I like to talk about this stuff. And so it's fun for me.
That's great.
Chris, what about you, friend?
Yeah, I'm excited. This really, I think, represents a maiden voyage for Danny and I. We've been talking for quite some time with John about pooling all of our passions and coming together to try to create some kind of a focus for this community that we love. And I'm super excited today to be invited on this journey. So thank you, everybody. Like Kara said, I grew up in Rhode Island. Now, Kara's got she's got some deal with New Jersey. I don't know what it is. She's some kind of love, I guess, but
they sound the same.
That little bitty island in Rhode Island, there's like 8 of us on the whole island, I think. But I joined the Air Force at a very young age and made it a career. I retired after 27 years back in 2011. Along that journey, as you can imagine, I was challenged with any number of opportunities for leadership and growth. And it all began back in 1988 when a boss of mine just took a chance on me and sent me to a school. And I very quickly grew to love what I believe is the loneliest job in America, and that is the leader, because it's very, very difficult. And if it's not difficult for you, I would argue you're probably not doing it right. It's a very challenging lifestyle for sure. So 27 years, and along the way, was superintendent of a leadership academy for the Air Force, and had a lot of great experience there. And then in 2000, right before 2011, when I retired, I thought, oh Lord, what am I going to do? This is all I know. I dress the same way every day. I do the same thing. Now I got to go out into this big world and the gate's going to shut behind me and I'm not sure what to do. So I formed Motivate that year with a leadership development focus, which grew quickly into a coaching business, and we'll be celebrating actually 12 years on paper this year. So very, very fortunate. But I have to tell you that I'm in the downside of that and trying to focus more on my new family over here at Muletown Coffee, and exclusively end up working with John and Rachel over at Columbia as their coach for any of you who would like some time to meet with us. So I'm incredibly excited to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so excited. So for those of you who don't know me very well, leadership and team is something I'm very passionate about as well. And Danny, along the same lines of what you said, I just want to do anything I can to help all my neighbors and our business entrepreneurs and such creative, wonderful people. I just want to help everybody do the best that they can do. And if somebody's having a struggle, I think this is absolutely wonderful. So before we kind of get into the meat, I just want to encourage everybody, if you have a question, please type it in the chat and we'll just interrupt Danny and Chris at any time that we want to get them off track. And we'll also leave time at the end as thoughts go. So if you don't want to interrupt, just jot your question down and we'll leave some good discussion time at the end. So I'm going to start just by, and Danny, I guess I'll let you go first, or y'all can draw straws. But you know, there are a few people that I love to read about and to listen to what they have to say when it comes to teams and being successful. One of those is Carl Larson and Frank LaFasto wrote a book many, many years ago, probably in the late 80s, called Teamwork. What must go right, but often goes wrong, or something to that line. It's a very small book, but if you love team development, it's an excellent book that talks about what has to be present for success, and how often that we fail and why we fail, and how you can actually help develop success and help facilitate success much more easily. And then also, I love Patrick Lencioni, who talks about teams a lot and the dysfunctions of teams and what a team player looks like. And then, of course, if you've ever read the good old book, Going from Good to Great, you know, they talk about putting the right people on the bus, but also taking those people and putting them in the right seat on the bus. So just talking about, you know, team development in general, Danny, I'll let you start. What do you think that we as leaders, we as team members, how can you make sure that you're getting off to the right start?
I lost your audio at a very critical point in that question. Can you please repeat it?
So in thinking about putting the right people on the bus and making sure those people are also in the right seat. So when you think about team development as a leader or as a member of a team, what are the most important things to consider when you've got a new team coming together, or you've got an old team that you need to sort of make sure that you're continuing to help them grow?
Yeah. So, I mean, the easy, quick answer for that is culture. It's a word that gets thrown a lot around now, but it's just, it's a family. Your business is a family, your team is a family. And so you should be very careful about who it is you're letting into your family. Two books that I like a lot, you're talking about books, is Simon Sinek, is a great author, but specifically Start With Why, Leaders Eat Last, are two really great books. And that's really, that probably was the beginning of my personal development journey in general. But then I also like to deal very much in the practical and in the everyday, like small business. And when I say small business, I'm talking like, you know, Muletown Coffee size, Silly Jane, you know, Puckett's, et cetera. And so there's a lot of, when you're taking those ideas that speakers that you're kind of alluding to, they're kind of ambiguous a little bit. How do you make those practical? And one of the books that I think really helps kind of translate that into practical is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. Those are probably my two favorite books. There's also another one that has more to do with leadership called Rocket Fuel, but I would say my business philosophy is based upon those three books. But in answer to your question, I mean, it all starts with your hiring process. You know, there's the mantra, I'm not sure who made it popular, but hire slow, fire fast. Hire slow, right? And have a good process going, so that way you actually bringing people into your family who deserve to be there and are the right fit for the core values that your team has, which of course implies you know what your core values are. And then firing fast. You don't let toxic people stay there for long.
Yes.
So I can go on and on for a while on that topic, but I would say that would be the most important thing. It all starts with your hiring process, but then again, preceding that is know your core values if you don't know them yet, because there's no reason to go look for people if you don't know what type of people you should be looking for. And yes, John. So John said, "Do you know where you can get all those recommended books locally?" They better all be over at Cowork Columbia. I know I gave you my favorite book list before, and those were definitely on it. So.
Yeah, so we feature the best business books on the planet, curated by multiple local mentors, including Chris and Danny. So we do have those books here for sale.
And John, if you don't have the little book, Teamwork, it's a really, really good book. It's very simple. So, all right, Chris, what's your best advice for where's the best place to start when you're thinking about developing a team?
First of all, can I just give props to John and Danny? That was the smoothest, most non-invasive sell I've ever seen. That was.
I did not. Yes.
God almighty.
That's all John. That's all John.
I need to learn a thing or two. I don't know that I could add too much to what Danny said. The culture word is incredibly important. The challenge with that word, though, is it becomes a very superficial term that we use when we're trying to address challenges in the workplace. What I might do is say, ask the questions of your people and take time and wait for the answers. Right. So if you're interested in what your culture looks like, it's very easy and very practical for you to make time, one-on-one time with all of the key players in your organization. And I can't emphasize this enough. Sit down with them, cup of coffee, whatever, or Asgard, or just sitting in the office hanging out. Right. Sit down and ask them what's important to them and mean it. Right, mean it. When you ask them what's important to them, find the alignments, find the pieces in your why, Simon Sinek language, in the why of your company and how that aligns to your people. It is just a matter of time, a very short period of time, if the whys are not aligned before you find unhealthy conflict. And then we've got a tiger by the tail because we've got to figure out, to Danny's point, how to fire fast. It's never comfortable. It's always difficult. So if you take your time to understand where your culture is and who are the best fits, making sure if the bus is going north, everybody wants to go north, and then finding, in good to great language, making sure people have the right positions on the bus. They're happy, they're excited to come to work, which, my friends, it's not a myth. It can happen. It absolutely can happen. And it takes work. It takes good leadership. It takes discomfort. It takes being patient and asking people where they want to be, where are they now, where they want to be in the future, and making sure they are good fits and good alignment for the company. And I've got a lot more to say about that in future questions. I won't wear you out in the first one.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think that also, what I'm picking up is that homework that you have to do, that pre-selection, that pre-hiring homework and just due diligence that you have to put in before you're going to hire somebody. Because let's face it, if you're going to interview 10 people, chances are you're going to get 9 really, really good people. But that doesn't mean that they're all great for your team or for your culture. And if you haven't done a lot of homework and a lot of due diligence on looking at your organization and what you need before you actually even start the hiring process, you've got some work to do. So, and this is not a pre-planned question, so I'm just kind of feeding off y'all's information. So what, in both of your experiences, what have you seen that people do poorly or that leaders have done wrong, and you're like, oh man, you could have, if you'd have just done this, it would have been better. So, what mistakes or what common mistakes have you seen, and how could that mistake have been avoided?
Well, I guess I could start with that one, Danny, because that one's much more ethereal. I know you're Danny lives.
Oh, I have something to say about it, but I'll do it.
Great, so great at that. I don't know why, but the first word that pops to mind in the answer to that question is vulnerability. That I work with an awful lot of leaders who struggle with being vulnerable, which means you're going to ask me a question more than likely today or at some point this week. I don't have any idea what the answer is. And it might be something very important to you. Like this just happened last week. Somebody asked me, where do you see me and where do you see the company 3 years from now? That's an awful loaded question that I wasn't prepared for. So be okay with being vulnerable. Be okay with saying, I don't know. I really don't know. But I promise you that I will not only find the answer, but I'll work with you and we can have a good dialogue to come up with the right answer for you. That may sound, again, very superficial, but it comes down to that one-on-one personal touch. If your folks can see the vulnerability in you as a leader, not a lack of confidence and not a lack of fortitude, but just vulnerability, that you're real, that there's no perfection here, you don't have all the answers, that can really help you in the long run to building the kind of trust that Lencioni talks about in his books, and the kind of culture that you need to have, because without trust, nothing happens, right? So let's answer that question with the word vulnerability and take an inventory on just how vulnerable you are as a leader, and whether or not you're willing to show that to your people and build the trust that's necessary. Yeah.
Danny?
And well, to put it, I mean, really, he nailed it. And I guess to put it in my words and much less eloquently, it's trust your people, listen to your people. The biggest thing that I see go wrong is when managers don't and leaders don't listen to their people. So oftentimes lots of problems and lots of costly mistakes or unhealthy conflict comes from the fact that you didn't let the appropriate people make the decision, your people, or you didn't listen to their input when they gave it to you. And instead you were, like Chris said, you weren't vulnerable. You didn't open yourself up. You wanted to look like you had the answer. And so you charged forward with your idea, but none of your people below you had buy-in on that idea because it was your idea, not theirs. So that's the biggest mistake that I see, is just not listening to your people. One of my favorite books, again, because I like to deal a lot in the actual nuts and bolts, day to day, what does it look like, is checklist. It's called the Checklist Manifesto. The guy's a previous president, I think, of the World Health Organization. And he talked about how, in this book, he talks about how, you have to push for your business to grow and for people to like working at your business. You have to push decision-making to the edges of your organization. So centralizing decision-making in your organization, not only one creates a bottleneck, but nobody else around you really is giving much input on the decisions of where the ship's going. And so they don't feel like they're really, they're not really that involved, because whatever they think, it doesn't matter what they think. We're going to go with what you have to say. So push decision-making to the edges of your organization. Don't be a control freak. Push it out and then let them make those choices, and you'll have better results, and your people will be happier.
Can I have a follow on to that, Danny? That last part especially was very good and very timely with what's going on in our world today, right? And I'm talking about all the challenges we have going on, but very timely and very specific with the challenges we're having right now over the death of George Floyd. This morning, to give you a very specific example, a very real example, many of you know Austin Jones, one of our stars over here at Muletown Coffee. I don't know how you can't know him. He's so wonderful, and he's so conscientious about the image that he portrays as our resident customer manager, wholesale manager. He wanted to make a post today on Instagram to follow the suit of many businesses and many individuals who are out there today making Facebook and Instagram posts for what's being called Blackout Tuesday. And he was very, very concerned about making that post without first checking with Matt and I. So I will tell you, as an owner, I'm both thankful for that, because I know that he's using very good discernment in the message he's sending. But I also found myself having to remind him, and if you see him on the street, you ask him. I said to him, Austin, this company is just as much yours as it is mine. And I mean that. We have to stroke the checks, and Matt and I may carry a little bit of a different burden. But when you get up in the morning, I want you to be thinking like Muletown Coffee is yours. So to Danny's point, that kind of a decision, I want him to feel comfortable with making those kinds of decisions, because I, as a leader, am comfortable with him making those decisions. Even and up to the point where he might make a mistake, there's nothing that we can't figure out, because I know his heart and his intent is in the right place. So that last comment by Danny, I think, is incredibly timely right now, and something we should be doing a whole lot more of as leaders in our companies.
So you're fortunate if you get to work for Chris Coyne.
or just be his friend is good too.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that leads into another question I had. So how important, when you're looking at developing a team, or you're on a team, maybe you're not the leader of a team, maybe you're just a team member, but how important is that leader to the team? And how important is it, and how crucial is it for that leader to continue that team development? I think sometimes we look at it, it's kind of like a one and done. I'm going to train you how to work here, and then I'll just let you go and we'll be done. But, can you kind of address the real importance of that leadership role and the importance of continuing the development process? It's not just a one and done kind of thing.
Well, management, in my opinion, I have 2 kids. I think management is just like having children, and not in a demeaning sense. It's in the sense of I can't just, put my daughter through 3rd grade and then be like, I'm done. Like I have to keep on pushing her through all the grades, to keep on pushing her to challenge herself, to do things that she hasn't accomplished before, to do things that scare her, etc. So it's just the same thing when you're a manager. So you said, what's the importance of it? It's the most important relationship is between the manager and then their direct report, because in that family of the business, that manager should be like the parent. They're there to encourage and inspire and to motivate and to push you to do things you've not accomplished before, but they're also there to provide the rebukes when needed and disciplinary action when needed as well. So it answers your question. It's extremely important. And to do it right, think about someone, care about them the same way you would a child who was in your care. I mean, again, not in a demeaning sense, but I think it's just a good way to kind of mirror the relationship. And again, you spend so much time with all these people at work. If you don't think of your work family like family, then you probably aren't in the right place. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about that.
Chris?
Yeah, that's good. I think this is going to sound maybe a little overly simplistic, but there is a major difference between efficacy, the effectiveness of leadership versus management, as has been written, ad nauseum for 30, 40, 50 years now, right? I think it boils down really to a very simple thing. Ask yourself this question, be very practical. Am I worthy of being followed? Because that's what leadership requires, not management. You can manage your way through anything. Particularly if you're an expert in a process or you have built a credible reputation in some area, you can manage your way through a number of different things. To Danny's point, the good and the bad of dealing with management. But to be a leader, you have to have somebody willing to follow you, right? That old adage that says, if you think you're leading somebody, it's important every now and then for you to turn around and look behind you, because if there's nobody there, you're just out taking a walk, right? So ask yourself, am I worthy of being followed? When you have the answer to that question, now you ask yourself, what am I doing every day as best as I can to demonstrate that continuous growth and development is important to me as a leader? It doesn't have to be a spotlight. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to stand on a stage and shout it from a megaphone, but just walk the walk. If your team see you engaged in growth and development and asking difficult questions and being reflective, the more inclined they will be to do that, particularly if they want to follow you as a leader. Otherwise, it's just a job for them. And here at Muletown Coffee, one of the things that we do stress quite a bit is we want to build the kind of culture where you feel like you could stay here forever, right? If this is what you want, that's fine. And we'll help you grow and we'll help you develop, and God willing, we'll grow and there'll be bigger positions and opportunities for you. But all of that comes with a purposeful growth and development mindset that you have to embrace as a leader, and then invite people to follow you in that. Yeah, I hope that answers that for you.
Well, and just kind of add on to a little bit what Chris said is like, this was kind of, or this has been my mission in a large part with whenever it relates to small businesses, is that sometimes because you're only paying this person $10, $12, $13 an hour or something, you write off the idea that you have to make your business a place that they want to stay, that they want to grow. But it's just as important because those are the people who are going to be your future leaders. And as your business grows and scales, those are the people who go into management positions and whatnot. So yes, maybe when they're a barista making minimum wage for you, they're not thinking they want to be a barista forever. But if you're building the right kind of business and the right kind of team, then they're going to want to be a part of that long term. And that's probably where the question that you got earlier, you mentioned, Chris, where do you see me here in this company in 3 years or whatever? That's someone who likes the family that they have here, and they want to know that there's a spot for them as the business continues to grow.
Yeah. Great point.
John had asked, well, what do you think is different about leading a team today versus 4 months ago? And I mean, I have my thoughts on that, but I just spoke. Do you want to give your thoughts on that, Chris? I guess you're doing it right now.
Oh Lord. Boy, I wish there was a panacea for this. Not. Can I start answering that by just saying day to day? Yeah, you take it, and then
okay.
let me feed off what you say. For us, day to day is probably the watchword right now. Yeah.
Well, I would say the biggest thing is stress. I mean, everyone is stressed right now, and so we're all people. And whether you're at work or not, you can't just shake off all the stress that you've got. So you're dealing with a team now who is, you're going to deal with a team throughout your life where different people are stressed or going through things in their, personal life or work life or whatever, and it affects how they do their job and how they interact with others and whatnot. But now everyone is stressed. Everyone has got a certain level of stress. If you're working from home, and you've got kids, they're around all the time now, and you don't get breaks from them as often as you used to. And, maybe you're not going into work and getting social interaction. If you're someone like an extrovert like me, you feed off of social energy, you're getting that like how you used to. And so there's a lot of things that are going to cause stress for people. So I think right now, one of the biggest common denominators, whether you're a virtual team or you're all actually physically in the same place together, everyone is at a higher level of stress. And as such, you've got to, as a leader, you're going to have to handle that differently than maybe you were handling it when you only had a stressed person here and there. With everyone being stressed, everyone's red and on high alert. And so, again, this comes back to culture, why it's so important, making sure that your culture is healthy and that people know where the ship is heading. They know they can feel confident that, the ship's not on fire. That you're instilling confidence in them. But yeah, I would just say, to bring it back, just being stressed and dealing with a stressed out team would be a difficult challenge, I would imagine, but I don't have a team under me right now. So.
Yeah. I don't know that I can add to that. That's a great place to start. If we can all just at least get in the canoe together and recognize that there is no one answer. The program that John's going to be bringing on board at Cowork, I think, is going to go a long way to helping some teams in rebuilding and getting used to this quote unquote new normal. As much as I hate that word, as everybody else does, stress is a big part. It also, I think, maybe comes down to there is. This is a little risky to say this, but there is one thing I think that COVID has done is it has really placed a strong, candid litmus test on companies. They and I don't mean just financially. That obviously is a harbinger for success or failure, but for the people aspect, which is really what we're talking about today, and the right kinds of teams, this pandemic has caused us to be necessarily self-reflective, not just about leadership, but about the mindset of our people. Where are they? Good Lord, are we divided? We're arguably more divided than we were before COVID-19, and we've got mask versus no mask, this versus that. So back to the importance of asking good questions, being a good coach, and being patient and waiting for the answer. Not an answer that fits in your head and your template as a leader, but the honest, candid answer from the person you're asking the question of. And if we're talking about your teams and your organizations, Lord knows they've got stress and they've got fears and anxieties on one level or another. And it's important for you to have that dialogue with them and co-create the future. You're going to carry a great burden of that as a leader, but that doesn't mean you should carry it all, right? You have a lot of people who want to help you carry the burden. And to Danny's point about pushing the decision-making out, give the opportunity for people to help you carry it and decide where you're going to be in the future. That can only be successful, I would think.
Yeah, it just goes to prove that if you take care of your people, they take care of your business, and they take care of your customers. Everything else kind of falls into place if you take care of your people. Yeah.
Amen.
So let's talk a few minutes about leadership a little bit more specifically. What are some habits that good leaders do? You know, do you check in with your people every day, every week, every month? Do you meet with them individually? Do you meet with them as a group? You know, what kind of habits do good leaders have with their team members?
Danny, I kind of like following you. So you set the plate, man, and I'll just clean up what's left. Not much normally.
Sure. That's not true. I think that definitely one of the biggest ones would have to be caring. You have to be a caring person. I feel like we've touched on that a little bit already, but if people don't, the old adage or whatever, people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So you don't have to be the smartest guy or girl in the room. You need to be the most caring person in the room. So being a caring person, and I think to do that well, you have to have regular check-ins with your people. So one of the things that I did the most when I was, working with local businesses here was I was helping them set up meeting structures, because meetings were happening here and there. There's crisis meetings and whatnot. You need to have regular meetings, whether that's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. Hopefully no less frequently than monthly, but checking in on a human level with your team. That's a habit that you need to develop, and you need to do it in a way that makes sure it's happening regularly. So caring, regular meetings to help facilitate that. I would also say personal development. That's a big one. The thing I was mentioned earlier. There was something I read before, saw one time, and it stuck with me, but it's like, to be an inspiring leader, you have to do inspiring things, and so I found that when I was COO for the development, or for the real estate development company I mentioned earlier, managing that team, I just felt better about inspiring my team, and I felt that they were inspired when I was doing things that challenged me, whether it was in the workplace or out of the workplace. And so I think it's important that you, like you said, walk the walk, or walk the talk, that you're being inspiring, you're doing things in your life, you're improving yourself. So that way, in turn, then your children or your direct reports, they want to copy you. They want to emulate you. So they want to improve themselves as well. So those are some of the habits. I mean, I feel like I could probably make a concise list if I wrote it down, but those are the things that come to mind as being the most important, in my opinion.
That's good. Chris?
Richard Branson, which many of you probably know, founder of Virgin Atlantic, Virgin Records, Virgin Spacecraft. So he's got all kinds of stuff he's doing. He said something a few years back. I'm sure he wasn't the first one to say it, but he's the first one I heard say it. You don't take care of your customers first. You take care of your people first, and your people take care of the customers. Boy, that is so incredibly simple, but we screw that up all the time. We don't place near enough emphasis in leadership on taking good care of our people. So I have a thing I just call it the focus pyramid that I created many, many years ago. And quite honestly, this is the first time I've had a chance since I left the military to put it into play. And the focus pyramid begins with 3 priorities that you have as a leader. Priority number 1 is quality of life, always. Priority number 2 is in some shape or form a capital investment in an infrastructure in your company to make sure that it can do the things you're promising it's going to do. And then priority number 3 is profit. Now, let me be careful when I say profit number 3. If you're in a profit company, you run it like a nonprofit, you're probably going to have some challenges, right? What I mean is, as a leader, you have to demonstrate through your actions that profit is not your number 1 drive. Your number 1 drive is to create the kind of environment where quality of life thrives. When quality of life thrives, money above and beyond that goes into making the company better. When you take care of your people and the company is in great position, sky's the limit for whatever industry you're in. Whether you're roasting and serving coffee, or helping entrepreneurs, or building an awesome new Italian restaurant that I can't wait to eat at, Chef Carlos, so get that thing open quickly, and all the other things that we're doing, the people that are on this call. If you begin with something like, in your terms, a focus pyramid, and make sure that your actions on a daily basis, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to have tough days. When you have a tough day, don't be afraid to show your vulnerability, but make sure that your actions back up the words that you're speaking. And then people will be willing to follow you, which, back to my first point, is the single biggest draw for a leader. People who are willing to follow you, not just because they have a job and you're their boss, but because they want to follow you. That's a big difference. Big difference.
And, all of this conversation really makes me think of how leadership has evolved over the years. 50 years ago, it was, most likely the guy at the top, and it kind of, everything just kind of trickled down. It was just kind of a one-way street as far as leadership goes. And now it's more of a horizontal plane, and it's, all the moving parts, and it's more shared, and it's more open, and it's more vulnerable to a large extent, but it's more of, everybody's really working together for the benefit of the company and the benefit of the team, rather than it's just an order coming down from the top. So I'm sure, Chris, you can relate to that being in a military background, and looking at how different leadership looks today versus what it looked like probably in our parents' or grandparents' age. So yeah, really, really good stuff. So Danny, Chris, I'm just going to, kind of open it up and let you talk about whatever's kind of still on your heart that maybe we haven't touched base with. And then anybody that's on the call, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself, wave at the camera, and I'll shout out to you, because what's going through your head right now. Surely this is making you pause and think about, I need to do this, or I need to do that, or I wonder if this works, or, so let's have some discussion and talk about what matters and what's on your mind. Danny, I'll let you start since Chris
Sure,
likes.
yeah. If anyone wants to think about this stuff, I mean, I wanted to say this before it got too late. If anyone is interested in, or if they need some help with maybe this, like processes that we've talked about, like I mentioned earlier, I like to deal a lot in the how it's done. Chris talks about like the why, and I think that's where he lives, and I get the why, but I deal a lot in the how. How does the work actually get done? How do we take that idea and make it a real thing? And that involves a lot of the unsexy stuff to talk about, which is checklists and processes and policies and procedures, and documenting things and whatnot. It's a lot less sexy, but it's how the work gets done. So if you found yourself in a place where you feel like you don't have a good process, I have a lot of different canned processes, things like hiring processes, or I even have a process for processes. If you're documenting processes, a checklist to go through to help you kind of put those together. So if anyone wants to, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. You can shoot me an email or just drop your email here on the chat or something like that. And we'll get in touch. But I know that can be, especially right now, you might suddenly realize because of the stress on the system, oh man, we don't have a process for that, or we need to improve on the one that we have. Or you have to create a brand new one because there's brand new challenges that everyone's facing. Just let me know. Like I said, I have a lot that are canned, but then I also enjoy helping people figure those out. So if it's something that's a little bit more customized, we can work on that together. So.
But those canned ones are a good place to start if you're struggling with just where to even start. You can always take something canned and morph it to your own and tweak it and make it better. I always like to start with, well, let's just put something down on paper, at least a place to start. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, what about you? What's on your mind and what's on your heart?
Well, I made a few notes in preparation for today, some of which we've talked about and some we haven't. So let me rapid fire a few things, and then if anything I say sparks a question or further interest, please feel free to ask a follow-up question. And between Danny and I, I'm sure we can make up some answer that will sound somewhat credible. Yeah. Before I go further, I did pull out two books, one of which Kara mentioned before. He's my favorite author in most all of business, and that's Patrick Lencioni. If you're leading people, this is singularly the book you need to be reading for teams, right? There are millions of great team books out there. This one stands above the rest. He takes a very unique approach. The book is dated, but the concepts are not. He takes a very unique approach in talking about dysfunctionality of a team versus functionality. And by being able to highlight that and see where the holes are, that's going to help you so much more than you can possibly imagine. The second one is a little unorthodox, but it's also a really great favorite of mine. And it's called Delivering Happiness. And it's from Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos. It's such an entertaining and easy read. and he's going to blow you away with some of the things that he does as a leader to this day. And this book is a few years old as well. I would invite you to follow Tony Hsieh and his leadership growth, because he's an amazing guy. Maybe a couple, three things real quick. Number one, as a leader, I want you to consider balancing your attention between what is called task issues and non-task issues. So task issues would be very much in my buddy Danny's realm, where these are the X's and O's of your business, the things that you should be doing on a daily basis that help your business succeed in your industry, in doing all the things that you want to do to measure success for yourself. Task issues, if you will, are things that you can, if you can picture yourself looking through a door that has a window in it, you can see the motions, you can see the things happening, the actual tasks, and incredibly important, obviously. Equally important are the non-task issues. So the non-task issues are the undercurrents of your team and your organization. How are your people doing? How do you know? When I ask you, how are your people doing? The next question I'm going to ask you is, how do you know? What is the proof? How do you know they're doing well or they're not doing well, et cetera? So let me encourage you to balance, especially in this environment right now, both task and non-task issues. Number two, many of you've heard me say this before, but I also would ask you to start thinking about how much of your time you're spending mentoring and how much time you're spending coaching. And those are two very different things. They're complementary. They're both very necessary ingredients, but I would ask you to do a little bit of both. Mentoring puts yourself in the expert circle. Coaching removes yourself from the expert circle and makes you more of a collaborator and a curiosity factor. And mentoring and coaching balance is going to play out very, very importantly in the next several months as we try to rebuild our businesses. The last thing I would say is, and this is a much larger topic for another day, but working with all kinds of leaders, from executives all the way down to brand new leaders, there's one thing that I found has been very helpful to many outside of the military construct. Also want to invite you to ask yourself, where do you spend a majority of your day? Do you spend it strategically or operationally or tactically? Those are three very different levels and all very necessary. They're military terms, but they work equally as well in the corporate world. So obviously tactical is the actual work, getting the work done, sort of kicking the doors in, if you will. Operationally is eking yourself now into leadership and management and supervising people and helping them figure out their way, answering why questions and processes, those kinds of things. And then strategically is what we've really tried to do a lot more of, Matt and I and Austin and Elena, our leadership team over here at Mealtown Coffee, thinking about our future, thinking about larger questions. How are we positioning ourselves? Who are our competitors? How do we best satisfy the needs of the market that's out there? How do we address our tribe as our tribe grows and diversifies? So those are higher level thinking that you should be making time for. Now, I realize that some of you are probably in one deep shops or you've just got a handful of people, but that shouldn't be an excuse. I would still invite you to be monitoring your time and asking where you are in the course of a day, how much of your time are you spending in those three realms. And if that's something that I can help you with, I'd be happy to have a follow-on conversation. Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff. In the book, Teamwork with Larson and LaFasto, they talk about creative teams. And one of the examples they talk about, which is so cool, is they talk about the Chicken McNugget with McDonald's and how the Chicken McNugget came to be and how it almost didn't happen because the managers, the leadership got in the way of the creativity of the team. So there's some really good stories in there about creativity and the different types of teams, the tactical and the creative and that kind of thing. So sometimes if things aren't going well, as a leader, you need to take a look at yourself and say, am I in the way? Am I in the way of something happening and developing? So we've got about 10 more minutes. So John, you have been so quiet. I'm so proud of you, but I know you're bound to have a question or a comment. And I encourage anybody else, this is the time. Let's have some conversation and some good discussion, because I know Danny and Chris could sit around and we could talk about this stuff all day long. So, John,
Well,
what's
Karen,
on your heart?
Well, thank you for congratulating me on staying quiet, Kara. Because it's actually really easy with Danny and Chris, because I respect both of them and their input so much that it's easy for me to listen in. But a week from today, Aaron Whitaker from Prevention and I will be doing a similar training like this. So just want to mention that. If you did, that's in the same email with the on the Murray Alliance calendar. It's also on the Cowork Columbia website calendar. So just I'll save most of my comments for that. But I will say that this is key. I mean, like, I'm somebody who's normally thinking about the marketing strategy and the finance strategy, and so that's where I spend most of my energy. But I echo everything that Danny and Chris said, that just so important to think through. Really, teamwork at its core is about empathy. Like that's the killer strength, right? Mm-hmm. That's the killer skill, is to develop empathy, the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, understand what's going on. And you've got to inform that empathy, right? You can't just make it up out of thin air. You got to ask questions and you've got to pay attention. But that's really the key to success in business in any period of time, but especially right now, because the reality is right now we just got off of, so I'm an economist turned entrepreneur. So we just ended, more than a decade of a really great market where everything was going great. There's money flowing. And that means that you can actually afford to be kind of lazy in business for a while. Like, there's a lot of businesses that had a lot of extra fluff that they could get away with that because there was more money to go around. And the reality is right now we're entering into the greatest economic crisis since the Great Depression. And that's not true anymore. So that's not a disaster. That just means that we all have to up our game. I mean, that's just really, and so this is actually in the end probably going to be better for all of us, but it's going to be hard in the process. So I'll mention one more time too, that link. If you're interested in whether it be future free workshops or paid workshops or ongoing training programs or one-on-one with Danny or Chris or myself or others on our team, then go to rebuild2020.info and just answer a couple questions there just so you can get to know a little bit about your situation. And we're pretty excited about what we're going to be able to bring to this community. This has been kind of like the heads down focus for the last month, has been figuring out, like, what do we do about this? What can we help? Because we love Columbia. I mean, we think that we have the opportunity to really be like what we're experiencing in Columbia is just a microcosm of what's going on all over the US and all over the world. And so we have the opportunity to really have a revival and to really lean into that. And then also I'm planning to document that as much as possible. I have a book coming out in the fall about this so that we can really tell the world what's going on and give them a booster shot of hope and opportunity. So I'm excited.
You're right, John. Thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation next week with you and Aaron, because it is, and I think I've talked about this with several of you that are on the call. We live in such an awesome place, Murray County, Columbia, Mount Pleasant, Spring Hill. It is just probably one of those places that is just special. What we have here doesn't happen everywhere. And so I think it's the testament of what kind of community we live in. It's because of the people that are here and the attitudes and the heart that we all have. So I'm just so I guess proud, I'm really proud to live here. I'm proud to know the entrepreneurs and the business owners that are here. So what else is on everybody else's mind? So Carla sends a note that Paul is listening, but he won't get on camera. So I dare you to turn it around, Carla. And so everybody say hi to Paul. Hey, Paul.
Hey.
Paulie.
So this is great. So Noah, what's going on? What's going on in your head? Tiffany, Carla, somebody tell me something. What's this stirring up in your head? Pat, I know you got something going on in your head. Unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry guys that I'm on mute, but I have like sensitive information on the desk. So yeah, no, I really appreciate everything that y'all were talking about and making sure that we're working in teams and our leadership being in teams. especially in today, the hierarchy is just, it doesn't work. Traditional hierarchy is out the door. I'm excited in the near future just to see how this completely evolves. And I don't know, it's just exciting to see that we're moving into a new generation of how we're leading our businesses. So everything that they're saying is just, it's great information.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? I'm putting a note in the chat. If you have suggestions about future conversations that we could have like this, you know, informal, really heart-to-heart discussions on a particular topic related to your business growing, and related to any issues that you're having as far as recovery, or not even recovery, just in general. We've talked earlier, you know, we see this as very much ongoing. It's not just an effort to help people through this recovery time. It's going to be an ongoing, long-term effort to just make it the best place that it can be to live, work, and play. So, Chris, Danny, I'm going to let you do some closing remarks, and then we'll sign off and remind everybody that you can register for the Zoom next week on Tuesday again at 2 p.m. again, featuring John Meese and Aaron Whitaker with Preventia, and would encourage you to join that conversation as well. So, Chris, Danny, I'm gonna give y'all, not that I always do this, but I'm gonna give y'all the last word.
I don't even know what to do. Karen's gonna give. Danny, I'll let you have the last word, buddy.
Okay. So yeah, I'll just say that I mean, this sort of thing is it's so important. I think leadership, the idea of leadership, was really ambiguous for a while when I would hear it. We talked about, you know, when I heard about, I don't know, it just seems like a very ambiguous concept. And so studying it is if you're in charge of people, if you're leading people in any way, you know, right now I don't have a team under me, but I've been organizing, you know, different things. And if you ever find yourself wanting to get something done with a group of people, you need to become a student of leadership. So reading the books, a lot of the stuff that Chris and I talked about today, it really does. It makes other people's lives better. And I have people who I've managed who credit me with changing their life. And I don't say that in a pompous or prideful way or whatever. I guess I am proud of it, that some people's lives are now better because they got to work at a place and they weren't miserable and they weren't disrespected and they were treated with kindness and cared for, and went on to excel in other areas of their life. So we all as leaders have the opportunity to do that for other people, is to give them a better place to be and inspire them to be better than they were before. And I think that small businesses too, who work with a lot of people who maybe don't have a college education or are very young, you know, maybe they're teenagers and whatnot. I think that there's a really special opportunity that small businesses have to give people, those people, an opportunity to really change their lives. Just like teachers, you know, remember everyone has like a favorite teacher they had in high school. I kind of see it the same way. So be someone's favorite manager that they ever had, so that when they go on, they remember you and you contributed to a better world. So that's all I've got.
Awesome. So I lied. I'm going to give one last plug. So talking about leadership, Leadership Murray is taking applications currently. We just opened those this week. If you're interested in more leadership development, Noah's in the current class. Danny and Chris are both they're alum at this point. So Noah, do you have any, would you like to encourage anybody to apply for Leadership Murray, even though your year has been quite unconventional?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what it's going to be like for you, but it was a great experience, and I'm sure our year will probably carry on to the next, you know, couple years just by virtue of what played out for us. But it was that's probably the reason I'm on this call and talk to so many other local leaders. And my business is national sales, so we have no local customers whatsoever. But it's still nice to hear from all the local businesses that do have local customers or just like me and have national customers. So it's been great.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome, everybody. All right, I've got 3 o'clock on the dot. So what perfect timing, perfect guests, and perfect conversation. So thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you next Tuesday afternoon for some continued conversation about growth and development and just being better tomorrow than you were today. So good to see everyone. I wish everyone well. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and see you next week, if not before. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Enjoy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Have a great day.
This was awesome.